we will have a look at probably the biggest news story of today, but there are other news stories going on, and that is the issue with Minister Wood and his airport shares. So let's have a look as to what happened with Minister Wood and TVNZ's Silver Fox. There's a Silver Fox on both channels, but TVNZ's Silver Fox wanted to tell us about it. And this is Michael Wood and what's been going on there.
Michael Wood was advised by officials half a dozen times to sell his shares in Auckland Airport. His failure to comply now costing him his job as Transport Minister, at least for the moment.
Yeah,
it's another ministerial drama for Labour, with the opposition leader pointing out the clear conflict of interest. Here's political editor Jessica Mackay.
Michael Wood is known as a cautious minister. Shown here wheeling his bike, he knows riding in front of cameras often doesn't end well. But today, a fall from grace has seen him temporarily stripped of his transport portfolio.
So I have to take my medicine around this, and I have to put these two things right.
I think it is an unacceptable situation for him to find himself in, and therefore I think the best thing to do is stand him down while he does resolve those matters.
It's about $13,000 in Auckland Airport shares he bought as a teenager and thought were in a trust. When he discovered they weren't, he didn't declare them properly and forgot to get around to selling them, even though he said he would multiple times, all while being Transport Minister.
If I think because they had an old email address, and in the reality of the fairly busy life that I have, I didn't get back to it.
This is a pretty bad look. I mean, he's blaming an old email address, yada, yada, yada. You with us, Joey? You want to say hello to the phone?
Hopefully you can hear me.
Hey. Because as you will hear, he was warned about it several times. So you can't really use an old email address as an excuse, because it seems that there was communication with him personally about this, I think.
To it.
Well, it's pretty easy to sell shares. $13,000 of shares, you just sell on shares, I would have thought. So it's not rocket science to be able to sell shares.
I'm not sure that there really is an adequate explanation for something like this. It's clearly been on his to-do list and he hasn't done it, and that's not okay. He should have done it.
He'll stay on as the Minister for Auckland and Immigration, and once it's sorted, he'll be back in the job.
I don't think the transgression is one that is so significant that he should lose his job altogether.
There's actually a surprising amount of balance here by Mr. Seymour. Doesn't go out after blood. Basically says he's ballsed up. It's not. He doesn't say it's not a big deal, but David Seymour, to his credit, has been slightly gracious. I don't know if I've ever said that sentence before in my life, but yeah, I know. You listen.
Together.
Look, I think this is more sloppiness than evil or dishonesty, but people do have a right to know. He should have filled his forms out right.
The Prime Minister's staff found out on Friday, but Chris Hipkins was only told last night.
I would have stood him down last Friday when I first found out about it.
So this is Luxon not telling the truth. You just heard the report. The office found out last week, and Chris Hipkins found out last night. The response from Christopher Luxon is, I would have sat him down last week. Well, he only found out about it last night. Now, you can say that's a failure of his office, fine, but straight away Luxon's blaming Hipkins for not talking to Wood about it last week when he only found out about it last night. Now, if Luxon had said his office needs reprimanding, fair, but that's not what he said. Listen carefully.
Minister's staff found out on Friday, but Chris Hipkins was only told last night.
I would have stood him down last Friday when I first found out about the issue.
I believe in natural justice.
John Key was caught out not declaring shares in Transrail.
The public of New Zealand have a right to know if ministers have interests in the business entities that they are dealing with.
It's been a rough ride recently.
Indeed.
Stuart Nash, Meka Whaitiri, Kiri Allen, Jan Tinetti and now Michael Wood.
Minister, you are a bit of a Mr. Fix-It for Labour. You're the person they bring in when people are in trouble. Do you feel this more keenly because of that?
I feel it keenly because I made some mistakes here. I got something wrong that has created a distraction.
A distraction Labour could do without, and he knows it.
And Jess is with us now live. Kia ora, Jess, take this forward. What happens now?
Jess.
Well, once he's actually sold the shares, which you can imagine after today will be a top priority for the minister, and once he corrects the record, which is the list of financial...
Just quietly. What about this guy?
Yeah, just
in the background.
Just down it, mate.
Just down it. Skull.
Once he corrects the record, which is the list of financial interests for MPs, he can come back as the Transport Minister, and that could be just a number of days. One of the reasons this is so frustrating for the Prime Minister is that Michael Wood has a reputation for being diligent, for being meticulous. He's been in this place for a long time, and he has big portfolios. So this really was a big one for him to get wrong.
No doubt the Prime Minister's also worried by another minister in trouble. It's not a good look, is it?
One of the key things in all of this is that Michael Wood was told at least 5 times over 3 years to sell the shares, and it just doesn't make sense why he didn't get around to it.
Now, it's not quite clear. Being told 5 times, I'm not defending him because Wood said they had the wrong email address. Does that mean he had 5 emails sent to the wrong email address? The way it's being said is he was told. When I say I told that person, it's more normally more I spoke to them. And if he spoke to them, 100% correct. If it has been sent to a wrong email, it's less, it's not nefarious anyway, but it's less of an issue, but it's still a balls up no matter how you look at it. I mean, how would you win if they said he was told 5 times, Shuey, would you interpret that as he was at least spoken to on some of those times?
Yeah, I would take that as successful communication, not attempts at.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I do agree. And I'm just trying to be fair here, I guess.
For so long. One of the reasons this is so damaging is because it comes down to the fundamentals of this place. If you have financial interest in something, you can't be making decisions around it. And if you do, it needs to be declared, it needs to be transparent, you need to manage that. This, yet again, is another Labour minister having an own goal. We've seen that a few times this year, and no one in this place needs to be told that it's only 4 months until New Zealanders get to decide who gets to stay and who goes.
So there you go. There's the overall story. Nationals acting Auckland spokesperson Paul Goldsmith earlier said he believes Wood's failure to immediately declare the shares was a conflict of interest and a breach of his obligations as minister under the Cabinet Manual. It presents a clear conflict of interest for a Minister of Transport responsible for Auckland's transport network as the Minister for Auckland. As Transport Minister, Mr Wood continues to be responsible for the Auckland Light Rail project, which is intended to link central Auckland to the airport. As Minister for Auckland, he frequently sits down to discuss Auckland transport issues with the Mayor, Wayne Brown, and possibly its own investment in the airport. All of it fair, completely appropriate. The one thing I will say, and we said this last week, with the national attack ads on, the Labour attack ads on National around the, women's health and all completely fair fodder. This is completely fair fodder for National to attack Labour on, attack ads. However, I'm not saying they're not appropriate attacks. I just noticed today in one of their attempts, so this is a National tweet today, the counteract for all these ministers who are part of the coalition of chaos is announcements. Announcers, and getting back to farming policy. So that's an announcement. So they're criticising Labour, correctly so, for what they're calling a coalition of chaos. Yet their response is, you should vote for us because we've talked about a bunch of stuff. Just pointing that out, that it's not, even though they've got it's a fair attack and it's a good attack by National on Labour, they don't seem to have very much to back it up with what the attack is, Chewy.
Yeah, when this story broke this morning, I was like, oh my God. My first reaction is, are we not at a stage where you can get your shit sorted knowing that this is going to blow up at some point, right? And is it sloppiness, or is it just disregard, or is it malicious? Again, those are the questions that should always be asked. It's not great that it's Labour. I wish it wasn't. But I can solve this right now. Well, the other thing I'd say before I go ahead and solve it.
I saw your tweet today. I know what you're solving is.
You do. You've seen behind the curtain. Is this keeps happening to ministers, doesn't matter what party they're in. And I don't like saying I agree with David Seymour, so we can't have that again. I'm an uncharitable man when it comes to David Seymour. I'd say saying that because he's probably got some conflicts of interest in his cupboard as well. But here I'll solve it.
That could be the case, yeah. That could be the case.
Here I'll solve it.
Go for it.
If you are an MP, if you are in government or trying to be in government, you should not have investments. You should not have a portfolio of houses. You just sell everything. You decide what you're going to do, because everything that you do in government, every decision that you make will affect that. You are not transparent. You have literally invested interest in what's going on. How can we trust ministers who pretty much all have investment portfolios and family trusts and that sort of thing to make the right decision if it's going to negatively affect their investments.
And this is not the first time we've had this kind of conversation. Everyone will know who watches this regularly. In the past, we've talked about, and it was about Minister Mahuta and her husband having completely above board and legitimate contracts with government agencies. However, the appearance of a conflict of interest is almost as bad as a conflict of interest. It's not, but the appearance of. And so I've been saying all this year, not to be too graphic, but if you share a bed with someone, or if you share a bank account with someone and you're a minister, the person who you are partnered with just can't get government contracts. Even legit above board, you just can't. You got to make that choice to even stamp out the appearance of the conflict of interest. Bunch of people in the chat sort of echoing the things around David Seymour. That's surprising of
it feels
Seymour.
yucky. I don't like it.
Seymour surprised me. Me too. John also says something interesting. Not exactly Labour working class look, is it? Between this and vape policy clearly protecting corporate interests, good to see Greens doing something left sounding with renter solidarity thing. And then there's a bunch of you guys who were talking about Uffindale. Luxon, of course, stood Uffindale down the moment he knew, never mind. And also Guru says, hilarious to hear Uffindale's sponsor daring to call the PM weak. Continuing on about Wood, though, what a disappointment, Dick. I think that's pretty things. And as others are saying, yes, Peter again, sorry, fodder for Luxon's coalition of chaos. Like we've said, part of your job as a politician is not to give the other side fodder. This is completely fodder. Now, it also makes me think about me. I'm terrible at getting jobs done. Like I've got a list and the list keeps getting longer and longer and longer. It's why I could never be an MP, because this is exactly the kind of thing I would do. Yeah, I'll get around to it. 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 Oh shit, I've just lost my portfolio. So yeah, it's not a good look. As David Seymour said himself, it's not evil or necessarily nefarious. My word, not his. But it's sloppiness completely.
It's
but
fucking dumb.
Do you want to put it?
It's super dumb.
Do you want to put in a government that can legitimately be claimed as being sloppy? That's the problem.
Yeah. I mean, I see people point out as well, John Key got caught on this.
Yep.
He I forgot about these 30,000 shares in I think it was Kiwi Rail at the time. Don't worry, I got rid of those. And then it turned out he actually had another 100,000 shares that he also didn't declare. So, I mean, people keep on falling into this trap and no one seems to be paying attention to it and making sure, shit, I better not do what that guy did because that looks awkward and embarrassing for everyone. They keep doing it. So get rid of your investments.
Well, in America, they make them have a blind trust. They sell their shares, but they can keep money in the share market, but it's in bought. They blindly, whoever looks after their blind trust, they don't know what their shares are and what they're in. That could be a solution. But I hear what you're saying, Chewy, but that's never going to happen. So I guess no one's ever going to force MPs. If you want to be an MP, you're not allowed to own any properties. That's never going to happen. So therefore, what's the legitimate way of doing this? And maybe a blind trust would be it. However, even with that, if you own 7 properties, I doubt they're going to force you to sell 7 properties and buy 7 properties. So you are still going to know what's going on. But for shares, I think the big thing in America is with shares, they do sell your shares, but then they rebuy other shares. Like someone looks after the blind trust to get you the similar value, but you don't know what your shares are in. Of course, unless you're Donald Trump and it's your sons who are operating the blind trust, which I believe is what they did.
Yeah, just ridiculous. And look, I honestly don't think anything to that level of just out and out grift is happening in the New Zealand system. But anything we can do to tighten it up and make it more transparent and know that our elected officials aren't just feathering their own nests like robber kings would be great.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys get pretty good remuneration and excellent perks. So, do you really need a shitload of shares? 7 houses, Mr. Luxon, and you're saying that landlords should get a tax cut? Come on. Come on.